Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves amidst a crumbling planet, and you'll be one of the factions on that planet that is fighting desperately to survive. Now you'll be managing your empire and economy, recruiting units, exploring your surroundings, waging war against enemies, and trying to be the first to construct your colony ship and launch off the planet. Cysmic is an epic sci-fi strategy wargame for 2 to 6 players. It takes 30 minutes per player to play, is for ages 14 and up, and is published by Star Reach Games. Now it's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a preview, so all the art and components you see here are prototypes. To see the most up-to-date art and components, check the link in the description of this video. The object of the game is to be the first to build all the different modules of your space colony and evacuate all your own units and get off the planet. Now you can see right now, it starts the game empty, but as the game goes on, you'll be building these modules up. It looks really cool once it's finally built. Now there's plenty of different asymmetrical factions in the game, and you'll be one of these, and they have a whole slew of even just beginner ones like these ones. Or you could be one of these advanced factions. Now all of them have how you set up, what kind of unit you start with, and all your special abilities. And even though some players start with certain units, here's the different types of units you can actually have throughout the game. And they're small miniatures, and then there are some huge ones, including your colony ship that you're trying to complete to get off the planet. Now here's your player board once it's built with your special faction, your board, your blueprints, your ore. Now to build those different parts of the modules, you're going to need the blueprints. For some of them, meaning any other player color that you're playing against, you'll first have to find those blueprints. And you can do that by doing a cyber attack on their colony ship, or by beating them in battle, taking their units hostage, and negotiating, giving them back in order to get the blueprints. But then you'll have to basically build the blueprints, and that's when you're able to build different parts of your colony ship, and you're trying to do that for all the parts. Now the game is played over multiple rounds. Each round, one player will be the first player, and they will take this really cool, huge launch button. Now on your turn, you're simply going to play one of the cards in your hand face down, and then one of them face up. Everyone starts with 10 cards, and everyone has the same 10 cards. So for example, I'll put one face down here. That means I'm burning that card. I'm not going to be able to use it. There are ways to get it. I'll show you later. But then they'll play a card on top of it like this, and then they'll take the actions of the card they've played. For example, this speaker. Now this is for the units. It's called the influence troop. Now what you'll do from top to bottom is you'll take one action in each of the sections. This one has 3 sections, so you can move each of them. That's why it's really cool. So all of my speakers out there, I'm going to be able to move up to 3 spaces as it shows. And let's show you about moving. So here's a speaker. I can move, again, you'll move all of them, but this one I could go 1, 2, 3, for example, or 1, 2, 3. You can't move through the mountains. You can't move through the lakes by default. Or now this one would get me around to here, but I can move in the other direction. I can go 1, 2, 3. Now this is a cave. This allows you to, it's kind of like use the cave to come out anywhere else on the board to another cave, almost like a teleport thing. You go through a cave. There's also these icons here on the end. I can go 1, and this will allow me to move to any other edge of the board that has this sort of icon on it. So you can really, the board is kind of like a sphere, even though it's flat. So you can really move around the board pretty quickly. But instead, let's say that I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 right there. Now, why would I want to do that? You can see this one right here. This is called a habitat, these things. And that having the flag, the control in there gives me control. And one of the things the speakers get to do is give you this influence. Now, these habitats are different values. If you look, you'll see a certain amount of pipes. This one has 3 because this is on a section 3. This is a settlement. So because I control this now, that's going to allow me to go up 3 on influence. Influence is important because it's going to help you get more troops. It's also going to allow you to carry more resources of this ore, which we'll show you later, is really important in the game. It's going to be how you get blueprints and all sorts of things. Now you could also do that to an unoccupied enemy habitat. So maybe the enemies have one on a habitat, they've moved away from it, you can go in there and get control of that. So change hands of how much influence is on the board there. You can also change the type of troop to any other type. You can kind of sort of change your units on the board with the speakers. Now, where you play this card is important too, and the card that you played. You'll see these 3 icons. Now, these icons will allow you get to choose one of these and activate that ability in there, like gain 2 discoveries. Discoveries are cards that are going to allow you to do different things. I'll show you some of these later. They're going to allow you to influence dice, sometimes things like that. You can, in this case, gain 2 crystal ore. Well, that would be great because, again, that's an important currency in the game. Or this one. This allows you to do one of 3 things, and these ones are pretty much available on any turn. We'll go over some more of those later. That would be it. That'd be the next player's turn. I remember you doing that for every one of these units. And then next turn, it would come to me, and I'd put one face down, put one face up, and do that action. And once the round ends, the 5th round, and you've done that with all the cards, everyone picks up their cards, and they sort of reset a little bit there. So the turns are pretty simple and straightforward in this game. Even though the game looks and feels and is pretty epic, it's pretty streamlined from a rules perspective. So let's talk about some of these other cards and different things you can do. Miners. These are units as well. You can move up to 3 of your miners, and your miners kind of look like this. They're going to be mining things. And if they end their movement on a orb spot, a crystal spot, you'll get a crystal ore, and you'll get a discovery card. Remember, we'll talk more about those later. If you end up on an explorable spot, you'll just take a discovery card, for example. Now, those discovery cards could be one of 3 types. It could be an event that happens right away, like all players gain 3 crystal ore. Or it might have you collapse a lake space, kind of like shrinking the board a little. Or there might be a green one, which is reaction, which is you can play it when you want to do different things, like play to reroll your yellow dice. That's going to be important during combat. These cards also can modify dice rolls, which we'll show you later in combat. Earlier, we talked about these little gray bonuses that you can use. You can play a discovery ability. And these have all different effects, but this one right here, you get 2 relics, keep one and give one to the other player. And when you get a relic, essentially you get to draw 2 relic cards. You get to keep one and discard the other. These are really powerful. Like, hey, every card I play has the blue bonus on my board. Or you no longer have to burn command cards. Both these are huge, right? So that one's better, so we would just keep that one. Now, in the future, you can get rid of one of these cards to pick up into your hand any of the cards you previously played face up or burnt face down. That's huge. It allows you to get cards back in your hand and take that action again before the end of that 5th round, before you get all those cards back. Now here, if you play recruit, you're going to recruit troops from your reserve, and you're going to then put them on the map. And then you get to activate 1 troop that was recruited this turn. Remember that influence we got from the speakers? That's going to tell you how much influence you have to sort of spend. It never actually reduces, but in this case we have 6. So it's 1 for soldier, 3 for miners, 2 for speakers. So I can get 2 miners, that would be 6. Or 3 speakers, that would be 6. Or any collaboration of that. Or maybe you want to spend crystal ore to upgrade one of your troops. So essentially you would be spending a certain amount of resources, like 1 to upgrade from a miner to this harvester. And that harvester allows you to, it works like the miner, but it's way more powerful. So you'll get 5 crystal ore and 2 discoveries on the crystal ore space, or 2 crystal ore and a discovery on a explore space. Or you might spend 3 ore to upgrade from a soldier all the way to a power mech. Now, these can move further. They can jump jet and power themselves over spaces like lakes and mountains and things like that. They have different dice. They have better combat dice. The red dice are better than the yellow dice and things like that. So they're better at combat, they're better at movement, they're just cooler all around. Now, when you may have noticed some of these symbols on some of the cards, on this one, you could spend an additional crystal ore to place it anywhere on the map, as opposed to next to one of the spots that you sort of control, or next to your colony ship. And this is a tremor. Now this board typically goes right around the edge of the actual, the world there, but I brought it closer to the camera so you can see here. So what would happen is this is going to move every time that happens. So next time someone plays a card, it goes here, then here, then here, and then boom, it goes here. Now when it gets to here, you're going to draw a fraction token, but then this goes here, and now the stack goes here. So every time a fracture happens, it's going to happen faster and faster each time you start going through. Now what do these fracture tokens do? Well, you'll draw a tile from out of this bag, and it is going to show 2 things. It's going to show a land type, savanna, and it's going to show a sort of a row of tiles there. And so this is savanna. It's on the 4th one, so 1, 2, 3, 4. This entire row is going to basically get flipped over. But before that happens, you look at which units are going to be possibly on those. And that's a miner. It has an early warning sign, and actually its card does too. It shows you even bigger. And that allows them to early detect that it was going to happen and move to an adjacent hex. So it could move like this, but if it was with another friendly unit, it could pull it with it, and now it's not going to happen there. But let's say it was sort of like this. This player went like this, and this player is all by itself. The soldier does not have that early warning system. And now some of these will just be abyss, others will be devastated, and they get relic tokens, and if you go through those, you get those relic tokens, and they do what I told you they did earlier. Now when moving, if you're with your own teammates, it doesn't matter, you're still considered unlocked. But if you ever get to a spot with some enemies, these figures are considered locked. They can't move out of here by default. And this is important because these are essentially in combat now, but this doesn't resolve now. And this is very different in this game, is that you've kind of been going in, but later on, this player might bring this in, and then you might bring some more in, right? And so there's different ways before things resolve. So you might wait for the right time to play the battle card, and this is going to resolve all of the places that you have, that you're in combat in, and you get first strike, which means you're the attacker. You get to roll the better dice and things like that. So maybe it's the soldier in the power mech versus the soldier in a speaker, for example. So the attacker would roll the right amount and the right colored dice and the blue die as the attacker, and they're going to roll these. And so this will allow them to re-roll one of these. So maybe they take the 1 and they re-roll it. Now this can have, oh, look at that. What a crazy good roll. Now this can do other things. This could cause a tremor. This could make another die go up 1 or up 2. And then each one of these dice is one shot against one enemy. So they're deciding which ones to hit with each of the dice. Now some of the units like the speakers actually have a -1 defense, so it actually subtracts 1 from the die, but in this case the dice were so high that it was defeated. And in this case, with so many dice against weaker units, that soldier would have gotten beat too. Now if there were units like this, you capture them as you defeat them, and they go into your prison. You're going to be using these to negotiate and be able to get blueprints from players later. If it was a vehicle, it would go in your salvage. I'll show you how you use these later. But let's just say we had not, let's say we rolled all 1s and we weren't able to defeat them. It'd then be the defender's turn. Now, when it's your turn to roll a strike die in your dice, you can decide to flee to an adjacent hex. There's some rules on what to do there. I'm not going to go into all that detail. But then they would have rolled these, the red, the yellow, and this, and they would fight back. And then they may have removed some of their people, which means, if there's still people left in the battle, then you'd start over again. This player would then roll the right amount of dice and things like that. You keep going back and forth until somebody flees, or all the units have been defeated and captured. Now let's say on our next turn we play the negotiate. Now first of all, we get to take that huge launch button as the first player marker. That might change hands before the round ends, so technically you're going to be the first player next round, but you might not be, depending on what happens. And then you can trade resources. You can trade prisoners or salvage or even crystals, relics, or discoveries to other players. But in this case, we have 2 prisoners. So we can take 2 prisoners or 1 salvage ship and trade it to their owners for their native blueprint. So we would trade these back to the orange player. And now we'd look at the orange blueprint. This is warp drive, and we would flip it over because now we know how to create that blueprint. We've essentially traded their prisoners for the information. Now, by the way, remember some of these bonuses that you could trigger allow you to do that as well. So let's talk about when you have blueprints and you want to be able to build them, how do you go about doing that? Well, you can do it one of 2 ways. You could do a robotic construction, or you could do a manual construction. Now, when you play your colony ship card on a turn, first of all, you must collapse the current space where your colony ship is and move a space plus a tremor. Then you can move your colony ship 1 space, and if it moves into spaces where other things are, it destroys them and things like that. But then this is where you can do the robotic construction, where you can construct multiple colony ship modules for their crystal ore cost. So you can do this as many as you can afford. So for example, if I had 4 plus 3, if I had 7 ore, and that's the reason why you want to get more ore, and that's why you want to get more influence to be able to hold more ore, is you will have completed these. And notice that their module there, they're activated there. And as you do that, you're going to fill those in to your colony ship. And so as you can see, we're starting to build those 2 spots. And again, you're trying to get this completely done and evacuate all the people out to win. And remember, you can do as many as you want when you do that robotic construction. So if you had enough ore, which is pretty much all you would have had to maxed out your influence and maxed out all your ore, and you would have had to have found these, you could do it all in 1 turn. But likely you're going to probably try to end the game by doing the robotic construction and trying to get a bunch of them done. But over the course of the game, you might be doing it the other way, which is the manual construction. And again, the manual construction is one of the things that you can do as that sort of that bonus there on any of the columns when you play a card. So if I had the plans for the power core, and I was doing a manual construction, I would have to spend 2 ore, and I would have to recall a unit from the board that basically is up to 2 influence. So one that's worth 2 or 2 1s, bring those back and put them in my reserve, and I would have, boom, done this one. Now remember, you can only do 1 of these on manual, so this is like a slower burn. We're doing the robotic construction, doesn't cost the people. You can do it all at once, but you need a lot of ore and it's hard to do a lot. Now, there's a couple other things about this negotiate card I did mention. Is the infiltrate. This is a way that you can gain espionage. Now we get an espionage card. You have two choices. You could put it on the exploit green side and place it here. This is an ability for you. And then while this is in play, after you play a burn a command card, you can place one on the back in your hand. That's huge. Or you could do sabotage, which is against everyone else. All combat dice rolled by enemy power mechs are yellow instead of red. If you select this one, it kind of goes like this, and it faces the other players so they can see it. Pretty clever. Now, we talked about negotiating and trading in some prisoners or salvage to get blueprints. There's another way to get them, is when you play a negotiate card, you can do a cyber attack, and you can have units that are adjacent to somebody else's colony ship, and they have to be unlocked, meaning they're not in combat. And essentially, you're going to roll the dice of that unit. Now, you could have multiple units, but let's just say we sent a power mech there, and after you wouldn't roll the strike die, you'd roll the normal dice. Now remember, you and the defender can still use these discovery cards to manipulate the dice, but then you'd look at the dice, and you'd look, maybe we were doing that to the green colony ship. We would need to have 3 in order to do the cyber attack. So if we did, then we would have it. So that's another way to get a blueprint from another player, without having to do the trade or negotiate with it. So let's talk about the end of the game, because it is a race. Remember, you got to get all the blueprints and get them, and then build the module, and then you're going to try to evacuate everybody. Now, a lot of times this happens with you playing the colony ship, getting the last ones through robotic construction, and then evacuating, which is moving all your unlocked units to the colony ship space and return them to your reserve. But you have to do so with normal moves. So you have to have your units that are close enough that with their normal move, maybe even moving through caves, can get back to your colony ship, because the ones that aren't are not evacuated. Let's say we left this one and this one couldn't quite get there. Because if they all got there at that point, you would have evacuated them all and you would have won and gotten off the planet. But let's say you were leaving 2 behind that couldn't quite get evacuated. You'd have to roll the humanity die, and if you get the number of people or higher, then you were able to win, but you left them behind, which means on the next game of Seismic, you would start without the ones that you had left on the board because you left them behind. Or you might roll this, meaning you can't leave any of them behind. Or you can roll that and leave any number of them behind. But if you don't like that part of the ending, there are plenty of variants to not use the humanity die for your different play style. But in a nutshell, that's pretty much how you play Seismic. Well, there you have Seismic, and as I showed in the overview, this has an epic table presence, but without the huge rules overhead that most games of this nature have. Now, if you'd like to see the most up-to-date art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me right in the description of this video. Now, that's going to take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure that Star Reach Games would love your support.